Ahoy and welcome to Prague and another edition of the Mars Guide. Today we are starting in Prague's main railway station because it was from here in 1939 that almost 700 young Czech Jewish children started their journey to a faraway country, to where they spoke a different language, to live with people that they didn't know, but where they would be safe. As the parents put their children and their luggage on the train, it was for practically all of them the last time the children would ever see their parents, as their parents would soon be murdered in the Nazi concentration camps. The children's escape had been arranged by the British Committee for Refugees from Czechoslovakia, and one of the organisers was a young British stockbroker named Nicholas Winton, who along with his colleagues in Prague managed to badger, plead and raise sufficient funds, often resorting to lying, bribery and forgery in order to get the children out of Czechoslovakia and into safety. It is a remarkable story that has to it so many components. So why were the children being sent away? Who was Nicholas Winton? What was he doing here in Prague? How did he and his college manage to transport the children out of a Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia? Why did it take nearly 50 years before his work was recognized? And why, when his role was revealed, how did it become one of the most moving and historic moments in British TV history? And why, finally, has it been suggested that Nicholas Winton doesn't deserve to have the title of the British Schindler? But first, as always, a bit of background. In one of my previous videos, I talked about how that after Czechoslovakia was betrayed by the British and the French, the Nazis annexed the Sudetenlands, which was then part of Czechoslovakia. As a result, a lot of Czechs and Germans who feared the Nazis politically fled from the country, as too did a lot of Jews on racial grounds. Since, as the Sudetenlands were now part of Nazi Germany, all the Jews would be subject to the 1935 Nuremberg race laws, which essentially stripped any Jew of their citizenship and made them a subject of the state. Jews weren't allowed to hold any professional positions, Jewish doctors were forbidden to treat non-Jews, and Jewish lawyers were not permitted to practice law. Nor could Jews be the rightful owners of any businesses, which were taken over by non-Jewish Germans who bought them at a knockdown bargain price fixed by the Nazis. Finally, there was to be no relations, sexual or otherwise, between Jews and members of the Aryan race. The Nuremberg laws, as they became known, did not define a Jew as someone with a particular religious beliefs. Instead, you were defined as a Jew if 3 or 4 of your grandparents were Jewish. It didn't matter if you said, "I'm not a practicing Jew," if you were an atheist, Hindu, Seventh-day Baptist of the Latter-day Saints or whatever. In the eyes of the Nazis, you were classed as a Jew. If only 2 of your grandparents were Jewish, you were classed as a Mischling or mixed. The number of refugees, political and racial, in Czechoslovakia was about 5,000 before the Munich Agreement. But after that and the events of Kristallnacht, this swelled to 250,000, of which 20,000 were Jewish. During Kristallnacht in November 1938, rioters destroyed 267 synagogues throughout Germany, Austria and the Sudetenlands. Over 7,000 Jewish businesses were damaged or destroyed. 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and incarcerated in concentration camps. In total, about 100 people were murdered. So, in the aftermath of these organized pogroms, thousands fled from the Sudetenlands into the now shrunken Czechoslovakia. The Czechs were overwhelmed and gave help to the Czech speakers, but tried to send the Jews and the German speakers back. But the Nazis didn't want them, so they were sort of trapped at the edges of the new borders, many of them living in makeshift camps. Ironically, one of these camps was set up in Terezín, which is a fortress town close to the borders of the Sudetenlands, and in 1941 the whole town of Terezín would become a Nazi concentration camp, and used later as a propaganda tool for the Nazis, where they convinced the Red Cross that Terezín was the actual and final destination of all the Jews from the whole of Europe. The Nazis even made a propaganda film entitled Hitler Gives the Jews a City, where the film shows how the conditions at the Terezín concentration camp were actually more like a holiday camp. The refugees, and not only the Jews, were given more support by individual organisations than they were by the Czech government. Britain and France, who clearly felt that they had helped to create this refugee crisis by appeasing Hitler, offered up a loan of $10 million, and Britain gave them another $4 million of conscience money to help fund the refugee crisis. One of those organisations set up in Prague was the British Committee for Refugees from Czechoslovakia. So enter Nicholas Winton, an Englishman with a surname born Wertheim in 1909 to parents of German Jewish ancestry. Sadly, in order to avoid discrimination, his family changed their German-sounding name twice, eventually deciding on the name Winton. At that time, Winton was a young 29-year-old stockbroker by profession who had a passion for sport and fencing and skiing, but also developed an interest in aid and helping people less fortunate than himself. In December 1938, after the invasion of the Sudetenlands, Winton had been planning to take a winter sports holiday. Just before he left, he received a letter from his friend Martin Blake, who had already travelled to Prague on behalf of the British Committee for the Refugees from Czechoslovakia. It contained an invitation. "I have a most interesting assignment and I need your help. Don't bother bringing your skis." In Prague, Blake arranged for Winton to visit refugee camps filled to capacity with Jews and political opponents from the Sudetenlands. Winton was shocked and appalled by the conditions and was upset about the future of the children, since he knew it would not be long before the Nazis would invade the rest of Czechoslovakia. He knew of the Kinder transport, which was an effort by the British Jewish associations aimed at getting children out of Germany and Austria, and decided that they needed to be one here in Czechoslovakia. Winton immediately established a children's section and, using the name of the British Committee for Refugees from Czechoslovakia, initially without authorization, began taking applications from parents at his hotel, the Grand Hotel on Wenceslas Square in Prague. And to make his work look more official, he merely typed children's section on the headed note paper of the British Committee for Refugees from Czechoslovakia. He then returned to London and set about trying to find ways to get the children out of Czechoslovakia, even roping in his own mother to help. The British government stipulated that any Czech children they helped had to 1. Be under 18, 2. Have a British sponsor, and 3. Pay a £50 deposit for their return trip. In today's money, 2021, that is about £3,500, $5,000 or about €4,000, so not a small amount of money. The first transport of children organised by Winton left Prague by plane for London on March 14, 1939, the day before the Germans occupied the Czech lands. And in this short clip you can see parents and children at Prague airport saying goodbye to each other before they boarded the plane, and there holding one of the children is Nicholas Winton. After the Germans established the protectorate in the German provinces of Bohemia and Moravia, Winton organised a further 7 transports that departed by rail out of Prague, travelled through Germany to Holland, and then the children embarked by ship to Harwich, Essex. Trains arrived in London at Liverpool Street Station, where the children were met by Winton and other helpers. The children, wearing identity tags, were allowed to take 1 small suitcase and 1 travel bag for food for the journey. At Liverpool Street Station, the children were handed over to the foster families, who had agreed to give each child a home. The largest transport of 250 children was organised to leave here on September 1st, 1939, but was cancelled at the last moment by the Nazis. They just invaded Poland and all the borders were closed, and 2 days later, Britain declared war on Nazi Germany. It is thought that nearly all the children due to leave on that train that day were eventually sent to Terezin concentration camp and then later murdered in Auschwitz. The total number of children rescued through Winton's efforts is not yet certain. According to a scrapbook he kept, 664 children came to Great Britain on the transports he organised. After the war, Nicholas Winton's rescue efforts remained virtually unknown. It was not until 1988 when his wife Greta found that scrapbook from 1939 in the attic of their house. It contained the children's photos and a complete list of names from those rescued. Winton's story came to the attention of the BBC and a presenter called Esther Ranson, who hosted a programme called That's Life. In the programme, they discussed the work of Nicholas Winton and what he had done and how others had helped to rescue the children from Czechoslovakia. Then, towards the end of the programme, Ranson said, "Is there anyone here tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton?"
Can I ask, is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? If so, could you stand up, please?
When I do my tours to the Terezin concentration camp, I show my tourists this video, and without doubt always moves people to tears. And although I have seen it so many times, it still has the same effect on me. How could you not fail to be moved by it? After Winton's role in the Czech Kinder transport had been revealed, Nicholas Winton, the quiet, unassuming man, was now very much in the spotlight. He was knighted in 2003 and became Sir Nicholas Winton. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times. Here in the Czech Republic, he is one of the most decorated civilians. Winton was awarded the Order of Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, 4th class, by Czech President Václav Havel in 1998, and the Order of the White Lion in 2012 by President Miloš Zeman. His story has spawned exhibitions, feature films, and numerous documentaries. He was even commemorated on the stamps here. He died in 2015 at the ripe old age of 106. Yet there have been some suggestions that Nicholas Winton's role has been overhyped. Winton didn't achieve all of this by himself. He was part of a larger organisation. So why did he get all the attention, all the credit and all the accolades? That he was part of a larger organisation is definitely true, but perhaps what is overlooked is that Winton never ever claimed to have done it all by himself. He didn't go around telling anybody what he'd done and how he'd helped rescue children from Czechoslovakia. He didn't even tell his own wife, who only discovered his scrapbook 50 years later, and when she did, he urged her to throw it away. The fact is that, sadly, by the time the story came out, all of those who had been part of the British Committee of Refugees from Czechoslovakia had died. So when survivors, people and governments wanted to show their thanks for the work of the refugee organisation, Winton was the only one still alive. And in subsequent interviews, Winton always stressed that he was part of a team, and he acknowledged the huge amount of work done by the unsung hero, Trevor Chadwick. Winton called him the real hero, since he, Winton, ran the operation in London, whereas Chadwick remained in Prague. My associate Trevor Chadwick was in a much trickier situation, he said. He did the more difficult and dangerous work after the Nazis invaded. He deserves all the praise. He managed things at the Prague end, organising the children and the trains, and dealing with the SS and the Gestapo. Here at the Prague main railway station, there are 2 memorials associated with Nicholas Winton. One that is on platform 1, and it was designed by Flora Kent, a Venezuelan sculptor who lives in London, and was unveiled in 2009. Then there is a second newer memorial called the Farewell Memorial, which you can find underneath the platforms that lead up to the concourse. It is a replica of a door from a railway carriage from 1939, and on the glass you can see 3D handprints. On one side are the handprints of the parents, and other side is the handprints of the children. And it represents the last time that parent and child saw each other before the train left, often placing their hands on either side of the carriage door window to say their final farewell. The Glass Engraver is a Czech artist and sculptor called Jan Honat. He went to England and took handprints from those who had been sent on the Kinder transport from Prague to the UK, and for continuity, he took the handprints of their grandchildren too. As a parent myself, I cannot imagine how these parents must have felt. And irrespective of your religious beliefs, it would be heart-wrenching for any parent to send your child alone thousands of kilometers away to another country, uncertain what would happen to them, but knowing full well it was probably the last time you would ever see them. So on that rather somber note, that is our look at the work of Nicholas Winton and the other unsung heroes from the British Committee for Refugees from Czechoslovakia. That include Trevor Chadwick, Doreen Warriner, Beatrice Wellington, Bill Bazzaretti, Nicholas Stopford and Josephine Pike, for whom unfortunately I could not find a photograph. And thank you too to the other hundreds of employees who helped to save the lives of nearly 700 Czech children. If you have enjoyed this video and you would like to see more, please do not forget to click and subscribe and press that little bell button so that you get notified of any new videos. Once again, thank you for watching.